And we'll actually start not with Trump, but with the president, Joe Biden, who's pulled out of a speech after contracting COVID. So it's yet another thing. Watch him coming down the steps, if you can, of Air Force One. This is the most powerful man in the world. I know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, cancelled a speech because of COVID. He should pull out of the presidency because of senility. I mean, to actually...
Do you think he knows where he is?
I generally don't think he knows what he's doing or where he is, but to actually get Putin and Zelensky muddled up, is more or less off the stratosphere.
Yeah.
And I think, this is... You've described him as the most powerful man on earth. He's certainly the leader of the Western world, and he is not capable of doing the job.
Earlier in the day, he said he would stand down if he was diagnosed with a serious medical condition. Have a look.
Well, he refuses
to. So I had some medical condition that emerged. If the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem. But I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided.
I don't. The logic of that.
What's he on about?
What does that mean? I didn't know he was running as a transitional candidate. He never said that.
He said
he
the
then
opposite.
tweeted this yesterday, 2 words. I'm sick. So it was his oh my
yeah,
what's going on?
That again.
Now, okay, he followed it with a tweet saying of Elon Musk and blah blah blah. But Daryl, it's just like seeing someone almost decomposing live.
That's so harsh.
Okay, disintegrating.
You're so harsh on this guy. I think you and I have had a couple of conversations about this, haven't we, over the last year or so? And you
were saying he was okay.
Yeah, and I've always, well, let me suppose, I've always made this argument that he is somebody who has been gaffe prone in his life, who's tripped over his words a lot. That was a big feature of sort of what he did.
Had a brain tumour 40 years ago.
There's no doubt about it that he is, he's not communicating like he used to. He's clearly physically struggling. I think it is pretty obvious that he shouldn't be standing.
Why is he going on?
Yeah, I think
answer that question. Why is he going on?
He can't. If he has cognitive issues, he can't be the one who decides.
Yeah.
Because he's going to do the thing of, I'm not going in a home. That's the classic thing, isn't it? Your parents say. So it's got to be his wife.
Possibly.
Remember Dennis Thatcher saying, "Don't go on, love"?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't
absolutely.
think she's saying that. Darryl, what's she doing?
I do think that we've got to be slightly careful with this, though, because it's tempting to want to diagnose. And the same thing happened with Donald Trump, by the way, and I was very critical of that when it happened as well. Diagnosing Donald Trump as being a psychopath or a sociopath or also, in cognitive decline, somebody who's not unfamiliar himself with making gaffes and saying odd things and bizarre speeches and things like that. I think we've got to be careful not to do that kind of thing from afar. It's a very delicate thing.
Afar is not watching the debate.
Right.
There's a close-up of him in the debate. He was out to lunch.
But hang on a minute, let's just consider that for a moment, because he is the most powerful man in the world. He does have around him the best physicians in the world whose lifeblood, bread and butter, is transparency about the wellness and the well-being of the presidents of their principle.
Why is he refusing to take a cognitive test? Why?
Well, I don't know what even know what that means. I mean, I don't know what that means because
whether you can remember a sequence of numbers backwards.
But I think
that would settle it.
Well, I think it's very clear that he. Well, it wouldn't know, would it? And I think that's the problem: is that you surrender to the logic of the people who want you to. Just take a cognitive test.
Maybe
and then he passes the cognitive test, and it.
Okay, listen. Maybe he's 100% healthy.
I don't necessarily know that he is 100% healthy, but I think he clearly should pull out. And it's the Ruth Bader Ginsburg moment where he should be doing it. He's doing his cause a disservice. But I think we have to be careful to diagnose somebody from afar.
There's another story going on, a big story in the States about the performance of the Secret Service. And you can see a headline here in the Financial Times is they're saying there's a misogynistic backlash, fundamentally because of the performance of the women. We'll get to that. But the director is a woman, Kimberly Cheetle. She's been seriously criticised for failing to secure the area. Listen to this.
Should that roof have been secure, period?
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
Well, you can imagine people tearing their hair out. The idea that we can't go on the slope roof, so we're going to let the gunman go on it. Just absolutely mad. And apparently the building contained officers who were on lookout. She was then, credit to this woman, because she did then turn up at the Republican convention, which is obviously almost enemy territory for her, and she was heckled by a senator called Marsha Blackburn.
This is exactly what you were doing today on the call.
Stonewalling. Attempt. You owe the people answers. You owe President Trump answers.
So the sloping roof thing is big, but then there's this issue of people attacking the agents who were female, which feels very unfair. But if you go on social media, you see things like this.
Female Secret Service agents. Let's talk about it. They should not be protecting a 6'3" United States president. This is a photo you haven't seen yet. Maybe because they don't want it out there. Look at her cowering. Are you kidding me? None of them can even fully cover him. What if he had actually been seriously hit? Were they gonna just drag his 200+ pound body? They were hanging around the men who were actually doing all the work. They were basically decoration. Not to mention, they might have actually made it more dangerous. This agent, she can't even holster her gun.
So, yeah, it's kind of brutal. And Ms. Cheadle spoke to CBS News a few months ago saying her business is trying to make sure there are more female agents.
To expand hiring, they're aiming to have 30% women recruits by 2030 and even allowed YouTube influencer Michelle Carre to train with agents.
But I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
So if you have a look here, we've got a tweet from I think a children's author, again, who's weighed in on this issue of why do we have female agents. I mean, this guy says there should not be any women in the Secret Service. They are supposed to be the very best, and none of the very best at this job are women. So it's very toxic. Have a look. This is the key thing people are focusing on. I'm just going to show you on my iPad here. So you've got 3 agents here, and I'll just play it. And you can see this one here can't holster her gun. So that's the first thing that's being mentioned. You see her really, she can't find the holster. And then this one here is running around panicking. Men could do this as well. This one here has got a problem with her sunglasses. And it's become like almost a kind of, I suppose, a meme. And it feels, well, it's brutal, but then it would be, Anne, wouldn't it?
It would be, and this plays into what I've been saying for ages in all sorts of contexts, including Parliament. You know, that you select on merit and the requirements of the job.
So it's fair comment, is it?
It's a bit robust, but I think the basic premise, which is saying, can you do the job? Now, there are some quite large women who possibly could do that job, but you've just got to ask that question. And to me, that's a reasonable one. It's not how many women have you got or how many anything else have you got. It is straightforwardly,
Darryl, is it fair to say
do the job?
These 3 agents were panicking? And then to say, well, they're women. What do you make of?
I think this is really disturbing. I think to invoke the fact that they are women in this context is, I think
too short. People say they're too short to protect a 6'3" man.
Well, I mean, there's a mixture of men and women, isn't there, around him? I mean, there were several men who jumped on him as well. It's remarkable that none of those men are being held responsible for the fact that he was almost shot. That he was almost shot at.
True.
I think and particularly with the gun holster thing and the glasses thing, you know, that is an example, I think, of how we often hold women in that context to a different standard to men. If a man had made the fumble, I mean, for sure, the Secret Service, you don't want them fumbling for their gun, do you? But that's a fairly human,
it was a momentary thing
that could happen to anybody. If it was a man doing that, we wouldn't be having a conversation today about whether or not men are suitable.
What about the photos which again have circulated of an agent appears to be cowering behind Trump?
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
Okay.
To be honest. And I think you've got to be careful with that as well, because that's a snapshot of a moment without the context. Cowering behind them, positioning herself perhaps as part of. Yeah. There were several of them, and they will have a procedure in that moment. They will position themselves strategically around the principle as they describe them.
But if you can't cover the chap you're supposed to be protecting,
well, there was lots
you are yourself physically unable
if you're
to do it.
5'3", you can't protect a 6'3" man.
I couldn't protect you.
Well, maybe that's.
But that's
you don't agree with that.
But no, because that isn't really what was happening there, was it? Because there's a team of them.
His head was visible.
There's a team of them, though, isn't there? And he went to the floor. They dragged him to the floor. They manoeuvred him away.
There is him being shot. Then he goes down. Now you'll see.
There's 3 men there.
And in fairness to the agents, Trump wants to force himself through because he wants to do fight, fight, fight. So at this point, now people are focused on the agent at the front saying she's not tall enough, but you'll see him, he's pushed his way through. I don't know, I mean, it's got very toxic, and Andrew Tate is involved, of course, so it's always a sign of bad news coming. There's a separate thing, just with so much American news, that obviously that incident has been gone over now inch by inch, and there is a 3D visualization showing how Donald Trump was moments away from being assassinated. So you'll see there, can you see the way the bullet passed? Below you see the model of his head. And then they make the point that had he moved differently, it would have gone through. And I will spare you that. It's shocking, Anne, isn't it?
It is absolutely appalling. And I still don't understand how somebody could be on a roof with a line of sight clear to the president and nobody reacts. The public apparently did. They said there's a man on the roof. They said there's a man on the roof, yeah.
But the unthinkable thing is, had they killed him, you've got a Secret Service controlled, obviously under the control of the White House, like everything. Trump supporters say all these court cases are all got up by Joe Biden. You've got then this, you'd have some sort of, I don't know if you'd have a civil war, but you'd have some...
Oh God! I mean, what?
Serious unrest.
I think more than unrest, you would have.
If it had been successful,
yeah,
it would have been the end of days, as we know it now.
I really woke up, regardless of what you think of Trump, so relieved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You as well, yeah?
Oh, of course, absolutely. My
you
God,
do not want to see that.
On two fronts, really. On a human level, for a start.
Well, of course.
Seen everybody killed. But also, absolutely, that would have been, he would have been martyred. It would have, as you rightly point out, led to, if you thought January 6th was awful, imagine what would have happened if they felt their martyr had been taken down.
And they would never have had a decent explanation as to how that roof didn't have a guard. Anyway, we'll talk about other stuff after the break.